So we've been talking about this whole policy thing. So as the title says, the ACI uses a policy-based approach. So what is a policy? And again, we will be talking these in more details once we start working with the practical. And that really focuses on the application. So with the ACI, we always talk about the application. So now for us, anytime we deal with the ACI, we talk about in terms of the application. It's now more a network centric. So now the approach has been shifted from network centric all the way to the application centric. And as you can see the diagram a little below, there are three tiers. It's a three-tier application where we have a web tier, there is an application tier, and there is a database tier, where you see something like QoS filters, QoS services, QoS filters. We'll be talking these in more details as we progress through. But the only thing from this slide I really want you to take away that remember, ACI is whole about policy-based approach. We will be dealing with and we will be creating a lot of policy as we move progress into this series. But something just to keep in mind, and again the policies are configured where on the APIC controller, because that's the brain. That's where you will go ahead and configure all your policies. Once the policies are configured, you will go ahead and apply those policy backs to your Nexus 9000. And then you can go ahead and start connecting your end host. Either it could be laptops, some physical server, a virtual server, a router, a switch, firewall, a load balancer, anything that you can think of. So this is from where we start some of the very, very important concept that you need to remember when we go into the practicals. You will hear multiple times from me referring EPG endpoints and some of these things. So I need you to really pay attention here or repeat this portion multiple times if you like. An endpoint. Just think of an endpoint just like a laptop or a physical server. These are just simply an endpoints. You can have endpoint. You can have multiple endpoints of the same type. Let's say in your company you can have one web server, you can have multiple web servers. So you combined all those web servers into a pool or into a group and give it a name. In this diagram we are saying a web tier. Similarly, you have another set of endpoints or servers. It could be virtual, physical, anything. Let's say running some kind of applications. You combine them into a pool again, and we are calling that pool nothing but as an app tier. Similarly, we repeated the exercise for the database servers, for the database endpoints. We're calling them as database tier. So endpoints were your physical, virtual, anything that you can think of, those are endpoints. Now we have grouped these endpoint based on their type. In this example, we just selected, let's say group all the web servers, no matter it's running Apache, IIS, Tomcat, we don't care. We just know it's running web server. So we created a group of that one and we're calling that a web tier. So first, as it says, we identified and grouped the endpoints together. And here we picked up a policy or a pattern you can think of, a web servers. App servers which are running any kind of applications, or the servers which are running any kind of database application. Could be Oracle, MySQL, PostgreSQL, Microsoft, anything. So we are just grouping them based on their type or identity or pattern you can think of. So this group of endpoints, we created a group of endpoints, and because we created this group of endpoints, that's why we call them endpoint group. Sometime this endpoint group is referred as simply EPG. So next time if you hear somebody saying ACI EPG, that means they are referring to an endpoint group. And I'm sure now you remember that endpoint group as a group, basically way to identify and group endpoints together, where we have grouped a type of endpoints together simply. And we are calling that as an endpoint group, or in short, we are calling that as an EPG. Now, once we have our EPG defined, we need to create policies, because if you recall what we just talked about a few seconds back, that in ACI everything is policies. So now we have created a group of endpoints. So now there are three endpoint groups that we have created. We have a web, app, and DB. Now when you create an endpoint group, ACI by default doesn't allow any communication because it works on the white list model. That means everything is denied. So you need to allow what you want things to communicate. So here, now let's say you want to make a communication between endpoint group web and an endpoint group app. Similarly between app and database. To allow that communication in the ACI terminology, we need to create something called as contracts. Without contract, the endpoint groups are not allowed to communicate with each other. By default, everything is denied. Here, we want to allow the communication between the web and app and DB. And for that, we just understood we need something called as contracts. Now, a contract, as the title says, a contract simply refers to one or more filters. So if I have to dissect into the old traditional terminology, think of a contract is nothing but like you're configuring ACLs. And if you recall, in the ACLs, we have a standard ACLs and extended. And generally in the ACLs, what we do, we say, hey, we are allowing the communication from this source to that destination, or from this port to that port. This could be the source port, this could be the destination. So in the similar manner, like the way we wrote in the extended list all the source thing or the destination or the port, in ACI we call them filters. And these filters are used by contract. If you see in ACL, there are two parts. So where you say permit and deny. So with the help of contract, you're saying, hey, we want to permit. What do you want to permit? That you really tells with the help of filter. So here, if you see that we are creating a filter between web and app, in that filter, we are saying TCP port 80 and TCP 443. So basically, we are allowing the communication between web tier and app tier on these two ports, 80 and 443. So remember, any of the EPGs to communicate, they would need a contract. And in the contract, you will have something called filters where you will go ahead and say, okay, what are the things allowed? These are the ports, or these are the IP that can communicate between this tier and the another tier. Once that is done, now if you see, we created something called as an application profile. So application profile is nothing but is a collection of EPGs and the policy that define how they communicate. So if you remember in this the web and app, we created a contract and there were filters. Similarly, we went ahead and created the contract and filter between app and DB. So now the app can talk, the web can talk to app and app can talk to DB. So all this collection of the endpoints or endpoint groups makes an application profile. Within an application profile, you can have only one EPGs or you can have multiple EPGs. It's up to you. Again, you can have multiple application profile, and again, multiple application profile can have multiple EPGs or no EPG. It's up to you. Hopefully that makes sense before we proceed further.